Welcome. I'm Bronwen Maddox. I'm Director of the Institute for Government. Delighted to have you here for this discussion with Danuta Hübner, Polish member of the European Parliament, Chair of the European Parliament's Committee on Constitutional Affairs, and member of some of its other committees. And she is very kindly going to come and talk to us about that really very, very valuable thing at this point in the Brexit debate, which is the perspective not just of the Parliament, but of other countries on where we have got to and on, indeed, what Britain is asking in all this and what those countries' interests are. Danuta's very, very kindly said she'll start for a few minutes. She's already just been grilled by the BBC this morning. She will start for a few minutes by talking about, in her view, some of the main points about Britain, Brexit, and the European Parliament. And then I'll ask her some questions, but I know a lot of you have questions, and we'll go pretty quickly to that. With that, very warm welcome from us.
Thank you. I hope it works, right? So
it will work,
yeah, thank you. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I just would like probably to start with something that belongs to the European Parliament cuisine. We are actually forbidden as committees to travel to UK. And so I'm just as a chair of committee, it's true, but I couldn't come with my committee, which would be probably more interesting for you if you could listen to also different political groups that we have in the committee. But before I say what is the challenge for the European Parliament, I would like to maybe underline the fact that these negotiations, this whole process in which we are and we have to get through it somehow is not just one-off event. When normally when you step down or leave an international organization, it's just one-off event. But here it's not the case. It is actually the process which will trigger or is triggering already as very serious consequences in terms of different actions, adjustments, and will be and is already very multidimensional and has legal, political, economic, social, all sorts, institutional, all sorts of consequences, both short-term and long-term. And this is something also, there is something also very special about this process, that normally the international negotiations or negotiations related to somebody leaving or somebody negotiating with somebody else in terms of the international relations, a deal, if you don't reach the deal, you go back to the status quo. It is not the case here. If we don't reach the deal, there will be probably the most serious consequences of the whole exercise in this situation. So that also makes this process very specific. What else makes also this process very specific is that it is at this stage practically negotiations between European institutions and a member state. Then in the future we will be negotiating between member states with more participation of the member states. But actually behind all that there's a huge number of stakeholders who will be affected very strongly by this process. So it's also something that makes this exercise very difficult. And actually we have been negotiating so far without knowing what is the final destination. So we are involved in a process which is not really leading yet to anything that we would know about, because we know very well what the UK does not want, but we don't know much, or we don't know enough about what the UK would like to have as at the end of this road. So having said that, I just would like to give you the impression of also our feelings in the European Parliament when we have to bear in mind or take into account all those specificities of this process. And as you know, all European institutions are involved in the process, and also I would say, in spite of the fact that the withdrawal and transition belong practically to European competences, member states are also involved at the technical level, in the whole process of sharing the information, of contributing to the position, also influencing the mandate. So we are also other institutions like Conference of the Regions, also Economic and Social Committee. They produce from time to time also their opinions, their views. They also listen to what Michel Barnier wants to share with with them. So there is a broad involvement of practically across the institutional board of the European Union. Now, when it comes to the Parliament, we are, I want to say, who cares about European Parliament normally in this kind of process? But we are important because at the end of the process we will come, and especially my committee, and probably I will also bear most of the responsibility for this, we will have to come with what we call consent procedure. So once the deal, hopefully by the end of October, maybe early November, is finalized, we will have to look into this deal and recommend, as committee, recommend to the plenary session, to all the colleagues in the Parliament, whether we accept the deal or whether we suggest or recommend to reject the agreement, withdrawal agreement, including the transition. That's the first big role of the European Parliament, knowing also that the dynamics, political dynamics within any parliament can just shift this way or that way. We have taken this extremely seriously, and we have done, I mean those who established or decided how the parliament will be structured for the Brexit process, that we agreed that we have to make everything that people in the European Parliament feel they are well informed, feel that they are also contributing to the European positions, feel that they are also talking to everybody who would like to talk to us, so that we have also open ears and open eyes towards all stakeholders, be it coming from the UK, Ireland, or from any other country, including US, who has developed some taste for the information on Brexit. And because of that, we have this Brexit steering group in the Parliament, which has been established by a decision of the leaders, political leaders, and the President, which includes five major political groups which have 75% majority in the European Parliament. So we have all those people from representing those political groups in the Brexit steering group, plus the chair of the Constitutional Affairs Committee, and we practically meet weekly. We have a very frequent meeting with Michel Barnier, also individually. I have regular meeting with Michel Barnier also on individual basis for issues which are important also for me to understand and to know. We contribute to all the positions of the European Union. So we are consulted and with the right to contribute. In this process of contributing, we also involve different committees from the Parliament. We are briefed and debriefed by Michel before and after every negotiation session. My committee had, just to conclude on my committee a little bit, my committee had more than around 25 hearings over the last year and a half, with many colleagues coming also from UK. I can tell you, I don't know how you feel about it, but each time we look for experts for the hearing on Brexit-related issues, but not necessarily UK side-related issues, but Brexit-related issues, we usually end up with a list of professors who are here on this island, and it's, which is also an effort, so not to discriminate on the continental think tanks and universities. It's always an effort to find somebody who would not work currently here in the universities or research institutions here in UK. So we had a lot of, and I have an index of my meetings I had over the last 2 years, 215 meetings related to Brexit, because all the stakeholders, I told you there are many of them, they are coming, be it the British government representatives or devolved territories, both the parliamentary dimension and the executive dimension, the think tanks, the sectors, the citizens, practically everybody is also from here is coming to European Parliament to share, to also understand our perception of the challenges. So we are very strongly involved in the whole process. So that makes me feel a little bit maybe safer than otherwise, that at the end of the process in the European Parliament, nobody will be able to tell me I don't know anything, nobody consulted with me, I'm against, it's a black box for me. It's impossible. We have everybody really involved, informed, and we have website, we share all the documents, and so that's how we approach it, with, I think, utmost sort of accountability to citizens across the current EU, and responsibility for the whole process. But the process is dramatically difficult, absolutely terribly difficult, I would say. And I still believe, even though the beginning, what is behind us was difficult because we were all learning, it's for the first time in the history that we are doing, both sides are doing. It was challenging, difficult. I think a lot we have seen on the British side, a lot of learning. I think we just, if I can say it euphemistically a bit like this, but also on our side. But what I think is ahead of us is much more difficult, because we have to do parallelly a lot of things between now and October, and we have to finalize by the end of October, at least at the latest beginning November, to be on time with the consent procedure in the European Parliament, which, even if we do it through the fastest possible track and only in English, it takes time. We need then, of course, the decision on the member state, the council level, at the European Council level, and then you can have Wallonia anywhere asking also for time to give an opinion at national level. Let's hope it will not be the case, because there's no need for that. But then we have also the British, the Westminster also somehow approving of what was negotiated, and we were worrying a little bit when we heard from State Secretary David Davies that it might be end of March or the second half of March. It's very late, and that's why the certainty will come extremely late, in the last minute. And my last sentence is, that's why I think on the EU side, even though we don't have commissioner for no deal, like you have a minister for no deal, but we have to envisage the possibility that there will be no deal, and we have to be prepared for that as well. So maybe I just finish on this.
Danuta, thank you very much indeed. I found the beginning of what you're saying, at least, very reassuring, in the sense that people do talk about the European Parliament here, mainly with a sense of worry that, supposing Britain manages to get a position that the Cabinet agrees with, and that can get through Parliament, that is agreed with Barnier's team, supposing that there is a deal, the kind of question you hear here is, could the European Parliament come along and vote down the whole thing? And from what you've said, you feel that the Parliament really does have a lot of input into this, that you have the chance to make all your views known to Barnier's team, to the Commission, and so on. Is that right?
That's actually that's my feeling, but it just doesn't come from watching the reality. We are working on it all the time, because we know how easy. I still think that, I'm sorry, maybe we can dispute on this, have a dispute on this, but I still believe that Brexit is largely by accident. So you can also have accident in the institution like a parliament, all of a sudden, because something happens and there is a mode shifting, and that's why it was so important for us to have the political groups on board, not individuals, but political groups. So we have the European Popular EPP. I'm sorry, I hope you know the acronyms. It's very difficult for me even to the Socialists. We have the ALDE, also the Liberals. We have, and we have also the Greens, and we have also the GUE, which is far left, let's call it like this. So, and they all together had 75%. We have normally, we had 3 resolutions. I didn't say we work also as any parliament through resolutions, which are political statements. So we had 3 of them before at the very beginning, then in the middle, and then last November or October. And now we will have a 4th one in March, and we have a growing support. So we have, last time I think we had 540 or something like that out of 751 in favor of the resolution. And it's not, of course, it doesn't mean that we like everything which was negotiated and the results of negotiations, but that shows that people care about the process and are asking, are being involved, and of course the most difficult issue for me would be the Irish issue, but the most important politically today is the citizens issue, and the European Parliament is most involved in it. And I can imagine that we will not have 100% satisfaction for the citizens, because there will be, the cases are so different, and there will be always some people who will not find the solution for their concrete situation in the deal. But we have, Parliament has invested a lot in pushing in this direction to get the final deal, hopefully the closest possible to the current situation where the full rights are with us.
Well, as you said, there are a lot of different groups there in the Parliament, a lot of different voices. Apart from citizens' rights, what are the other questions, themes that the Parliament really cares about?
Well, we were, for reasons which probably there are some reasons behind that, we agreed that we decided first of all as the Union, it was quite a challenge to convince our friends here that we have to do it with certain sequencing. That first we have to discuss what is about withdrawal, then we also have to have the framework for the future, to know the framework, and the Article 50 is asking us for having the framework before we finalize the withdrawal, including transition agreement. But we wanted first to discuss, to advance the issues related to withdrawal, because there was a tendency, which I must say I can understand, on the British side, immediately to jump to the future. Referendum was not about the future. Referendum was just asking people stay or leave, and the future is the real challenge. So I can understand that everybody would like to know and negotiate the future. But first of all, we never got the information on what will be the future in constructive sense. Imagine what is the vision that UK has, but we still insisted on leaving, because we have to have the withdrawal agreement within the 2 years, the whole procedure, and the future agreement we can only negotiate once you are out, right? Once you are a third country. So we knew that if we don't advance the beginning, there is a lot of risks. And now I see that it was a very smart movement that we had to get. And we chose from the withdrawal agreement issues, we chose 3 as those who are absolutely decisive for the first phase of the negotiations, and I think rightly so. But that doesn't mean that we are today done with entire withdrawal. There is a lot of issues related to the separation which have not been touched, where we don't have the common agreement or the joint understanding of the challenge. On some issues we don't have yet the British position. So now the challenge is really to see this as a priority. We have to finalize the withdrawal part of it. Parallelly, we have to convert what we already have into legal text, so which is another challenge. Parallelly, we have also to have some very exploratory or initial talks also on the future to come by October to this what the treaty calls framework for the future. So no negotiations about the future. This will be really the third country agreement, but the framework has to be decided, and we are not yet there. So we have to do all those things parallelly. And parallelly, we have to do the technical level, the political level. We have to do also the information campaign. So a lot of things which will have to be done in the months to come. And the time is really practically it's tomorrow, October.
Yes, I entirely agree on that. What's the Parliament's? What are the views in the Parliament about the transition?
We made it clear practically at the very beginning. It's not far from what everybody on the continent is saying. So we first of all, we didn't want to sit. We understood that there might be a need for but it was up to the Brits to decide, as we are saying. In all speeches of Madame May, of your Prime Minister, she was calling it implementing period or implementation period. I don't remember, it was from the Lancaster, I think all the time in this.
A long time ago.
Yes, but it was through time flies, and, but it is about transition, meaning that you have to go out to be a third country to negotiate the future, and you cannot have it overnight. So if you leave on the 29th of March next year, and I think that you say Central European time, no, British, the British time. It will be midnight probably on the continent, but you cannot negotiate it in the meantime. So you need transition even from that point of view. But it's also transition is a little bit extending the time for the preparation as well. So we can see this aspect of the transition as well. So, but we don't want the transition to be extended without limits and to replace practically the future agreement, because probably for some circles here it wouldn't be acceptable either. So that's why we in the European Parliament first resolution we talked about no more than 3 years. So, but it was not important 2 or 3 years. The important thing was that there might be a time limit for the transition. And secondly, we agreed with all those who believed from the very beginning that there will not be sufficient time to have a bespoke transition agreement, to even to have the EEA, European Economic Area type of transition. So the only way to organize the transition was practically to prolong or kind of status quo, prolong the current situation.
The Article 50 sort of.
Yes,
yeah,
so and that so we will have the transition period, which will mean the same, that the UK will practically be not only practically, will be in the single market and in the European Union Custom Union, and with ECJ, of course, but will not participate, because at the same time not being a member, because membership will end up in the 29th of March, or 30th of March. So we will have the situation where you will not be the British. I'm sorry, I know that you are not on the UK, so I shouldn't say you, but that UK will not be participating in the whole institutional framework decision making. No Brits around the table when we will be fine-tuning horrible directives or regulations that nobody will be liking here. So that's of course the challenge for the British side, but that's the only way we can do it. So this is actually also the position of the Parliament. We didn't want to have
just to extend the status quo.
Just
as really the only way you could do that transition.
We think so, because there's no time to have a bespoke agreement, which is actually, as we see, is the case.
Yeah. A lot of people would agree with you that technically that is by far the easiest way. It is politically one of the more difficult things here to propose to do that, but we'll come on to that. You said at the beginning something that British officials and ministers hear a lot. What is the British position? We're waiting to hear. And in a way, the UK thinks it's been very clear. It wants a bespoke agreement. Much more access than Canada, many fewer restrictions than, say, under a Norway model. And at the moment, that's not something that Barnier's team is saying will happen. But it seems to be the UK, without being very specific about what it wants in that, is quite clear that it wants that middle ground. What do you think the chances are of that happening?
When you say bespoke agreement, I can say, okay, fine, bespoke agreement, but then what do you mean by bespoke agreement? Because it can be a bespoke agreement, but a bespoke agreement that is responding or meeting all the red lines of the European Union, which is the integrity of single market, and which is if you just have a part of the, if you are only in, like Turkey, in the custom union with European unions, but you are not part of the European Union custom union, then immediately you have checks on the border, and also you have to also understand that in trade within the European Union, it's not only about the custom union, it's not only about the customs, it is increasingly, I would say, about the norms and standards which belong to the single market. So if you, like everything that's related to food, but also the security of all the products, safety and all the technical standards which belong to, not to the custom union, I would say, but to the internal market. So for us, bespoke agreement, if you say CETA plus, no, there was this one of the
plus, and then maybe plus.
So,
yes.
And then I think response of Barnier would be yes, CETA plus security agreement, or CETA plus agreement on aviation or on fisheries. So in this sense, plus yes, but not CETA plus in the sense of cherry picking or picking up issues from the single market, and this is out of question. So I think that the red lines of the European Union, which were from the very beginning in all the guidelines and directives, and they will be repeated probably till the end, is that you cannot dismantle the integrity of the single market. That is absolutely crucial, and it's not a political argument. If you look into how single market actually works, you can see that there is a lot of interdependencies, and to single out something, you would have to identify, you would see that there are so many links to other areas, and this is true for the 4 major freedoms, but it is also true within all those freedoms that it is impossible to see that you can pick up from the single market some of the issues, and so either you take the entirety of it, or you don't. But then if your red line is to be out of single market and out of customs union, then you cannot have a bespoke agreement just like part of all those things. No, that's not possible. But of course there is a challenge for the future if you don't want to take the European economic area, for example, as become a member through EFTA. There is procedure probably for it, which is important to also understand. But or if you want something that would be, for example, the single market for financial services, but not the rest, then we cannot have it. For example, there's no way that UK can accept it. But bespoke in the sense that it will be kind of free trade agreement, but somehow we have to find the way how the financial sector has to be coped with, I'm sure that it will be based on equivalence, or adequacies on this type of approach on the EU side, but would require a lot of monitoring and enforcement mechanisms, and that's clear. Then, if you want some sort of custom union, as I heard from Robin Walker, I think at the beginning, or I don't remember who it was, because you also change minister from time to time, and so the other comes, and so it's
change prime minister too from time to time.
Yeah, sometimes, fortunately, in some member states we have also changes of prime ministers. But I also think that if you think of the custom union, you have to be aware that if you step out of it and just want only to pick up something, then you will have the borders, and that's why the Irish issue, I think, will remain as the most difficult, in my view, the most difficult issues. Really then you will have to have a sort of regulatory cooperation in this, which is a bespoke thing. So it's because if you want to, you will have to keep standards on some areas. For example, if you take equivalence, there must be also a control, and then you also need the situations where there will be conflict. So we need also a mechanism for the conflict solving, and then also to execute the arbitration outcome. So there is a lot of sort of models for those things in different agreements that we have with Ukraine is also often mentioned. So finally, it might be a bespoke, but not in the sense of, I hate to use this cherry picking because it's just sort of devalued very much, but not in the sense of picking up here and there.
Okay, well, thank you.
What tastes good and what does not, no.
Yeah, well, we might dig into that a bit in questions, what bespoke means and so on. Let me just ask you finally, before we go to questions, you mentioned preparations for no deal on the continental side. What's the nature of those been, and how far have they gone?
But I'm speaking here as private because I'm not doing it. Sorry, I know that there is a special. I can only imagine how I would do it if I were doing it. But I think both for the situation when finally the transition comes to the end, UK leaves the European. It doesn't matter whether it leaves in an orderly manner; it just leaves. So a lot of work has to be done also on the EU side, also in the member states. Because a lot of relations with there are relations with UK as a member of European Union, but bilateral relations. No? You can have in various sectors, as you know, European competences are not covering everything that is moving on the territory of the European Union. So there is also a lot of things which have to be done at the bilateral level in a way that would not lead to the race to the bottom on the EU side. So we have this challenge as well. But I think definitely when you mean no deal, you don't only mean that you have to sit, or at the end of the transition process, that you have to sit and get UK out of the treaty. This can be done sometime in the future with the first change of the treaty. I don't know, it will be Serbia or it will be something different that would take us to the treaty change. But you have a lot of issues much more serious than just getting UK out of the treaty. You have a lot of directives and regulations. You have also areas where UK is more involved or less involved. You have opt-outs. You have so there is a lot of things across the legal framework of the European Union where we have to see the consequences, and these consequences, in any case, where UK is out, will have to be controlled, identified and taken care of. Or if there is no deal, it's also UK goes out. So we have to do it. So there is this work to be done. I think identification across the board, the consequences, and the big thing is of course the international agreements in this context. It's in any way important, but in case of no deal, as well. Then you have to identify the problems for the member states who will just face overnight. The biggest thing is this overnight thing, most likely, if you don't have the deal, because it will not give us 2 years to adjust. And you will have all the lorries, the planes, everything you can imagine. It just all those things have to be taken into account. So my imagination tells me that nobody is dreaming of this situation, and we hope it will never come, but the end of the membership will come. So a lot of work on the EU side has to be done, like you are doing the withdrawal bill. So
it has to be done anyway.
It has to be done anyway. So, and also will serve a situation which hopefully will not emerge, which is no deal.
Let's have some questions. Start here in the front. A lot of hands up immediately. If you can say, I'm going to take them one at a time at the beginning at least.
Juliette Samuel from The Telegraph. I wondered if you could say something about what you think Poland's priorities will be in the negotiation for the future relationship, and assuming there might be an election during that time, although it looks like the government at the moment is doing quite well in the polls, but I just wondered what you think their priorities will be.
Thank you.
You want me to one?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that from the very beginning the priority was citizens, because and I think there was this problem of I think the current government especially would like to have all the Poles back in Poland and have Poland first strong and with all the citizens there, which is to a certain extent maybe happening. I don't know even the current data how much of those more than 900 that we think are here, how many of them have already gone back to Poland. But I think the citizens issue will continue to be, and Poland will be sort of looking at it, or even for political reasons. So I think this is something. But then UK has always been an important commercial trade partner, but not as important as it is for the Netherlands or Germany or Belgium or France. So I think that Poland, I don't see any really, except for citizens, very specific, different priority for Poland that would not be part of the common priorities. Maybe they will look into the structure probably for agriculture more than for other exports from Poland in terms of importance of the market. So I don't know. I'm sure that there is a work being done there, and but for Poland, just to finish it, for Poland, of course, UK has always been seen as whatever government, I would say, as a special partner. I remember also from negotiations for which I was responsible for that UK was an important partner, even though we always had the suspicion that UK is so strong in favor, because that gave the big enlargement to the east, gave the chance to water down, was giving the chance to water down the integration process, to avoid the deepening of it. Where I think there will be a negative consequence from countries like Poland is that the group of non-Euro countries, where UK has been playing always a leading role, also because of its potential, economic potential, and even though the legal situation is different because derogation of UK is of different nature than the other countries are in, but UK was a very important leader of this group and gave them political sort of strength. With UK leaving the non-Euro group, will be less important. It is a group which is also, I would say, contaminated a little bit with certain Euroscepticism of political elites, so that's also an important factor. And I also think that with UK leaving, generally the political weight and political center of the European will move towards Euro much more strongly than it has been so far. So for Poland, it's an important factor for the good and for the bad, which they will have to take into account.
Thank you. In the middle here. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Nassim from the One Campaign. I just wanted to know what you think the implications would be for developing countries once the UK has left. And do you think the UK will still commit to the European Development Fund after Brexit?
Frankly, I don't know. So please take into account the fact that I'm not involved in the development aid, and I know that during the budget the sort of financial settlement negotiations, or that the development fund was extremely important because it's not part of the EU budget. It's a special position, but also what I read recently about from the British Council. I mean, the huge commitment I understood on the British side to continue the involvement in any kind of development support through in the whole world. So, but I don't know finally what is the agreement if they will contribute to the EU fund, or there will be a separate. They will do it separately.
Whether they stop doing it through the EU.
But I don't think they will do it through the EU because there's no reason. But I don't know how this will translate to increase. Where the money physically will go. Will it be more from UK directly, or? I don't know. But we can check it if you're interested. My assistant is sitting next to her, so we can check it for you.
Over by the door. And if people in the next door room want to ask a question, please stick your head round.
Thomas Cole, Open Britain. Do you agree with the sentiment to the statements by President Tusk and Juncker made earlier in the week that if the UK were to change its mind, this is something which will be welcomed?
You know, I remember I was in November, I think we had a meeting with national parliaments, because I'm responsible on behalf of European Parliament for the national parliaments, corporations, national parliaments. The only thing that got from my speech on Brexit, I was speaking after Michel, I think, Barnier, and then the only thing that got through was when I said that the door is still open, no? So that this option is still on, but that was the only thing that interested the media, and also it was in Express here or here. But if you read carefully, I think Donald Tusk and Jean-Claude Juncker said different things, because Jean-Claude Juncker said there is Article 49, you can still apply, right? So it was, if you go, you can still apply, and Donald Tusk was rather saying that you can still change your view. I was believing in this, that this can happen, but I thought more at the early stage. I think it's getting too late for this type of change in the whole thing. That's my feeling. But if you ask me if there is this possibility of revocability of the notification of the intention, I belong to this group.
Before the UK has actually left.
Yeah,
yes.
I belong to this group who believes that it is possible. It is, of course, not anymore unilateral. It is already a multilateral, in fact, process. The Article 50 at this stage after the British notification, but I'm with John Kerr on this, with Lord Kerr, that it is possible. But whether you have political situation in the short period change so much that you can have another referendum, I don't know. If you want to have a referendum afterwards, there's no time within the 2 years. I can tell you would have to do something to have this period extended, for which you need unanimity, which I don't know if it happens. So I'm not, and then I can tell you, except for the individuals who are very unhappy with, like the one we saw the action, there is, I saw on my way, there is an action of Stop the Brexit, join us in Stop the Brexit action. But I think that you can have it, but anybody who's coming, who's representing anybody, also businesses or financial sector or devolved territories or government. I haven't heard from anybody this possibility taken seriously. I must tell you that there is sort of commitment, even if we voted to stay, we have to get through it more than, so I don't know, but it's of course up to you. I mean, I'm old enough to know that anything is possible, so I don't know. I wish you all the best. I also would like to see you back in the European Union.
Thank you for that, which rings true. Here on the aisle, then over here, and then I'm coming over here.
Thanks, Bronwen Danuta. You're very welcome. I'm Michelle Gildernew. I'm the MP for Fermanagh South Tyrone, and I know you understand the Good Friday Agreement, having headed up the Barroso Task Force, and we believe that Brexit is very much incompatible with the Good Friday Agreement and the rights of the citizens in the north of Ireland. 1.8 million people in the north of Ireland are entitled, under the Good Friday Agreement, are entitled to Irish citizenship and therefore by dint of that EU citizenship. And we would be very concerned. I'm hugely concerned. My constituency has a very long border. I'm concerned about the impact of coming out of the customs union, out of the single market, the impact on our people, on our communities, and on all the work that's been done over the past decades to try and build peace. It's very worrying. So we're asking for support for continued EU representation for those 1.8 million people, and asking for the support for amendments 13, 5, 95 and 144, because we really do believe that if we don't have European citizen or European representation in the Parliament, that those citizens are being left behind against their will, as 56% of people voted to remain within the EU. Thank you.
It's a horrible question. It's very difficult. I am extremely committed to everything, and we had a lot of meetings, and also, of course, Sinn Féin is extremely active, and Martin Anderson in the European Parliament. I must say that we hear less often the colleagues from the UP, but now they are speaking more often also in this, but mostly it's you. And because nobody knows, maybe not everybody knows, that what our colleague was referring to is now we are preparing the law on the composition of the Parliament in the next election, 2019, and there are those. There was this idea of keeping the possibility of having the representatives of the Northern Ireland in the European Parliament. It's not possible, that we cannot do it, but you know that you don't have to. You can elect Northern Ireland citizens in Ireland, because you don't have even if you don't have territorially elections in the Northern Ireland, but those people who can be elected to the European Parliament, because you have double citizenship. So it's not so we have to look. We changed this. We put it into yesterday. We decided to have also not only recitals those issues, but also in a point in our resolution. But I don't think we can reach this type of solution at the end of the day, because there will be no legal basis to do it. So we are trying. We understand, and theoretically it would be a good idea, but I think legally it will be impossible. So just not to. I'm sorry for this, but I know how important it is. So we are doing, but we are making the reference to this in our regulation.
Over here.
Andrew Kahn, a former governor here at the Institute and a former British civil servant and commission official. Can I take you up, Mrs. Hübner, thank you very much for your presentation. Can I take you up on the cherry-picking point and no bespoke deal? It gets quite difficult in this country to see that position as being anything but punishing the UK, which is what a lot of people claim, and everybody in the continent says, no, we're not doing that. But lots of other third countries have bespoke agreements. Switzerland has one, the Ukraine has one. There's lots of cherry picking which has gone on in the past. Liechtenstein has special arrangements, Andorra has special arrangements. There are all sorts of special arrangements all over the place. So it's rather difficult to understand why Britain shouldn't have a bespoke deal. And why there shouldn't be some cherry picking, because there always is in such agreements. So the position that the continental, the EU27 side has taken is a little difficult to see as the same as the approach taken to other third countries. In stage one, the EU27 won every single point, and the UK gave up almost every point. If the same happens in stage 2, that the EU27's red lines are kept to, and therefore the UK's red lines are abandoned, and the two sets of red lines are, of course, incompatible. I mean, there can't be an agreement if they both are respected. Is the European Parliament worried that you end up either with a deal where the EU27 has won every single point, or you end up with no deal? But in either case, you have a United Kingdom which will be bitter, feel isolated, and, if in the case of no deal, impoverished. That is politically very unstable and very undesirable for the continental Europe. And I wonder whether the European Parliament, as a political body, is really rather worried about the prospect of that if the EU27's current position is maintained, you end up with real political instability and danger.
You know, when I can say, you probably know that European Parliament actually from day one has been promoting the idea of association agreement with UK. We continue to keep it in our resolutions, but it has never been picked up by UK. It is also true that we have never heard the UK really proposing anything coherent or anything that would be like the future agreement or this destination. This just where you really want to land at the end of the whole story. I know that this famous cherry picking understood in a way that is the undermining the integrity and the autonomy of the European Union is rejected. But maybe what UK will propose finally, if it proposes something, there will be a positive attitude. We just don't know what UK wants, so we present the principles which must be respected, and we take the only point of view that we are presenting is that anything, you might remember the two things that actually the British side was always very unhappy with. One was just when we were saying that anybody who's leaving the Union cannot be in a more privileged position, taking more privileges than a member state without having the obligations. So that was always treated as a kind of punishment. Why do we say that? That if you leave, then you will have less, you cannot have a better situation than a member state. But that's actually reflecting the fact of life, which is there will be less integration because you are leaving. So even on the issue of citizens, there will be less integration. So there will be elements where you might end up with something that is less than full membership, a citizen of a full member of the European Union. And the second principle, which you just mentioned, that we cannot accept that from everything that European integration means, which is basically the single market and the custom union, that you cannot cherry picking meant that you only pick up what you like, but you don't you just what fits your needs or what you like, but you are rejecting all other things. We see this integrity argument as we take it very seriously, and this kind of cherry picking will undermine the integrity of single market. So it's not really seen as a well, I really don't think I participate in all those meetings where we're behind the closed doors, and I really don't hear anybody on the EU side that would think in terms of punishing, or if it comes, I think, from evaluation of the substance as being undermined by certain approach on our side. So but I take your point. But we are looking at everything, and we are worrying about certain things on both sides, of course. But so let me just take once. You're not, of course, the first one, as you know, and the only one who talks about those things. So I take it again with me.
Interesting. One of the points where feelings on either side of the channel are very, very different about whether Michel Barnier is too tough. Here on the aisle.
Just to prolong the question, we had a bespoke agreement. It was not implemented and achieved, but it was conceived by the European Commission, and it included financial services. It was TTIP with the US, with a regulatory cooperation. So how can it not be possible to think in a similar way to when it comes to the future relationship? And another question, if you allow me, what do you expect the resolution from the Parliament to cover in March? Will it be already ruling out the possibility to have a future relationship when it comes to financial services, an agreement including financial services? And third question, if you allow me.
No, two. Go on.
Okay.
Your best. Would you like to say who you are?
Yeah, I work for Aviva. My name is Arthur Caribia.
Terrific, thank you. Forgive me, there's a lot of hands up.
On TTIP, it was terribly difficult to get Americans on board. We were the party that wanted to have the financial agreement very strongly embedded in the whole framework of TTIP. But you know, in the financial agreement, there are two issues. One is regulatory cooperation, which we needed very, very strongly, which was relatively easier to establish, even though not everybody on the European Union side, politically sort of wise, was accepting that. And the second thing was market access to the market. It was extremely difficult. The American side didn't want to have the market access in the trade agreement. They were opposing it till the very end of our meetings under President Obama, and that was mostly, I think, motivated of not only slightly different nature of the whole thing, but also to avoid that if you have it in a sort of one place, then the trade-offs come much easier, and then there was this risk of for the American side they wanted to avoid it, but there's no way. In CETA we have extremely limited elements of the financial market. Then it's not Michel Barnier's invention that if you look at the free trade agreements across existing in the world today, you can't find a template for having the financial services as part of free trade agreement. It does not exist within the WTO structure. So we are looking for something that would be specific, and additionally, of course, it is also we understand the importance for UK. But I'm actually surprised a little bit that UK talks only when we have colleagues. It's mostly City that comes to. City UK that comes to Brussels to talk about that, but on the UK side, nobody talks really about services in general, but you have a lot of services which have direct impact on the life of citizens here in the UK, including electricity, including a lot of other things, and also very strongly linked to the functioning of European continental companies here as well. So it's much broader issue, and but it's hardly ever raised. So I don't know finally what will be what kind of agreement. We are thinking that it will have to be something truly separate. Maybe it will be somehow linked to free trade, I don't know, but certainly there will be something on the financial services, that's clear. But also we are now still negotiating with the UK participating. We are negotiating a whole package of regulations and directives now, which are also creating the future solutions for after Brexit, especially for the capital market, like EMIR 2 now, and you know this and ESA's review and everything. So we are, but you also have to take into account that the European Union will have to protect ourselves against the risks that might come, because we don't know how disruptive Brexit can be, how we will end up. So we also have to create a legal situation in Europe that would protect the huge market against any disruptive forces that might come. So it's very complex and very difficult. Certainly the Commission is identifying every problem that is linked to this, and certainly we'll have to strengthen definitely all the equivalence regimes we have in many regulations. They are weak or they are not there, so this will be equivalence is unilateral, as you know, so we will have also a lot of discussions on this on both sides. So it's but there's no solution yet. Well, TTIP, you know the story, so we are not back for the time being.
Thank you for those questions. Perhaps come and ask your third one afterwards. I can squeeze in, I think, two more. Let's go, maybe three. Let me see what I can do. There, there, and there. We'll take them all together, please.
My name's Tim Doran. I'm a senior researcher here at the Institute. The UK government is working hard to build relationships with member states, but there hasn't been a lot of engagement with the Parliament as far as we've seen. What would the Parliament like to hear from the government, and do you think it would be helpful if the Prime Minister were to address a plenary session?
You mean the European Parliament?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, we had this dream of Mrs. May coming one day, but I don't know why nothing came out of this idea. And I think it was not us who
so you would like that?
Gave up the idea. It would be very good, but I don't know. It's you know, it's not just that Mrs. May is coming and people are critical, or it's just it has, the moment has to be chosen, and frankly, if I can say it, we can talk openly here, or it's under Chatham rules, or whatever.
It isn't.
Not I think on the side of the British government, I would choose very, very carefully the moment which will be the best from the point of view of the objective of going there, because going there and just to not to be able to say anything that would have impact on the ongoing process probably would be a loss of opportunity. So, but we are certainly open.
Okay, and let me take the other two then.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Yulia Sakar from KPMG Brexit team. I was wondering if you think there is any chance that the UK could get financial service, a deal including financial services without having to be under ECJ jurisdiction or without having to make concessions on immigration.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You
That's
know,
a bespoke. And let me take this last one at the same time. And I'm really sorry, that's going to be the end of it.
It's Masato Kimura, Japanese journalist. My question is about dispute resolution scheme on FTA and ECJ jurisdictions. So EFTA court ex-president said to here, so EFTA has a mutual organization with European Union. And they said EU, United Kingdom can enjoy this scheme, but so Japan has a negotiation with European Union with FTA, so-called EPA, and so the most difficult issue is dispute resolution scheme, and they shelve this issues. And I think so in the past you didn't have the scale, but you have the scale these days, and you don't want counterpart to sue in your countries. And so what is a transformation of your concept of dispute resolution scheme?
Thank you very much. Okay, dispute resolution under an FTA, something like the ECJ or the EFTA court, as the president of the court has suggested right here.
Yeah, well, I think we have been analyzing all the existing models, because there are many many solutions, including the famous Ukrainian, which probably looks the best over there. But we have also talked with EFTA. Is also one of the first discussions actually was to what extent EFTA can be a solution, especially due to the sort of close links between the EFTA court and the ECJ. We have, I think this is still open. Whatever I say will be like preempting, which I have no idea where we will end up with the solution. But I think all available solutions which exist, which are different, they are still under scrutiny, under analysis, and what will be chosen. I don't know at this stage. I don't know if anybody knows at this stage, because we are talking about the future situation. For the transition, we have that ECJ will on the EU side will stay.
And briefly, the previous question and this is a cake and eat it question. Can Britain have access to financial services without signing up to the ECJ and freedom of movement?
The simple answer is I don't know. Because it's still everything is ahead of us. But as I told you, this argument against cherry picking is exactly linked to the fact that you cannot just want to pick up what fits, what tastes, what responds to your taste, and then just you do not want the second half of it. So probably I can't imagine that I could give you a positive answer to your question, but as I said, we will see how these are the most sensitive, the most difficult, in the sense of the potential impacts also on the market. So I don't think anybody at this stage could respond to this question. I don't know the answer.
an absolutely reasonable point on which to end. Thank you all for terrific questions. We clearly could have gone on quite a bit, and it has got a lot more time to run, though, as you said, October is, at the same sense, sort of tomorrow. Danuta Hübner, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.